What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight. Today, I have an outstanding human being, one of my favorite people, a coach who made me not only a great player, but made me a better man. And I speak for hundreds of players that walked through the tunnel and lived on the campus of Virginia Tech. I have none other than the GOAT, the legend, Coach Mike Gentry. Coach, how you doing, man?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm honored to be here. I tell you, I think what you've been doing is so great with all of your mentorship and all of the things that you're helping young men with and helping young people with. It's just awesome. I'm not surprised.
Well, it's again, I told you before we got started, I told you leading up to this, man, this is probably one of my biggest highlights of 2020. I've had some phenomenal guests, and the whole Vicktory Life movement and all the people that are part of it, whether it be women, men, no matter race, color, creed. It's about unity, about legacy. It's about a lot of the things you taught me and so many guys that played for Virginia Tech that were under guys' leadership like you and Coach Whitney and Coach Sano. And we're going to talk about those days. But before we get into your time at Virginia Tech and the great run you had, you know, Coach, I was a 17-year-old kid coming to Blacksburg out of Hampton, is also known as the 757. And, you know, you had an ability to connect with so many players without losing the respect. Well, all coaches can't always do that. But before we talk about that time, when did you know, you wanted to be in coach? Like, let's talk about your time before you became the GOAT, Coach Gentry. Let's talk about, like, where did it all start for you? I mean, did you play football or any other sports? Did you wrestle?
Yeah.
Let's talk about your career.
I was a very average high school athlete, a guy that, we moved when I was in high school. So went from a small pond to a big one, and things didn't go great that way. And so I kind of got off track a little bit and got sideways, doing things not exactly right. And along that path, I went in, I'll just fast forward to going in when I was about a senior in high school, maybe a junior, to a small little brick bodybuilding gym in Durham, North Carolina, where there was, you paid $6 a month to train in there. And it was not air conditioned, not one thing fancy about it. And there were former Mr. North Carolinas that were in there, and they were just like, to me, something unreal. I was a 150-pound kid. And it fulfilled in me something that I really needed. And that was the ability to set goals and reach them and feel better about me and kind of get back on the right track, and really changed my life, And from that point on, I've trained. Only in the last year, maybe with all the virus and different things that have kind of pushed us back a little bit, have I not trained like I've all my life. But I went to Western Carolina. I continued to train and continued to be very active in that. And, it was a time that not everybody was as active. And a book came out called The Strongest Shall Survive by Bill Starr. And he was one of the pioneer strength and conditioning coaches. One of the very first. He was at Maryland. He was at Hawaii. He was with the Colts. He ended up at Johns Hopkins. He's passed away now. But it was a monumental book, and it still is. So if any coaches are listening and you want to coach football and strength coach football, it's like the Old Testament, I guess. You need to have that, and it'll help you. Well, it changed me because I really didn't know there was such a thing as a strength and conditioning coach. Honestly, usually it was just position coaches that did it, and it was sometimes good, sometimes it wasn't as good because it wasn't their focus. But when I saw that, I knew that's what I wanted to try to achieve. And from there, I was already in physical education, went and got a high school job right out of Western Carolina over at Owen High School in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Coached 3 sports, coached all the 9th grade boys. You can only imagine. And
wait a minute, what sports? What sports? You say you coached 3 sports?
Yeah, I coached football, assisted football. I did wrestling and track. Now, Dwight, you've seen my track workouts, and we didn't even really have a track. We had an old. You had to take the tractor out there and drag it. There was no pavement to it or anything like that. I could tell you a story about it, but the story is I recognized that we didn't have a track. We didn't have a track team either. Nobody really wanted to coach it. So I said, okay, I'm going to get these football guys out, and I'll get every football player I can get. I'm going to get them to come out and run track. And I knew that would be, we'd help them. At the same time, at least we'd be sporting the team,
Mm-hmm.
I coached it right out of a book, Dwight. I'd be out there at practice, just basically having read it the night before, and we had no uniforms. So listen to this one. I made them all meet me on Saturdays, and we all took 10 dozen donuts, Krispy Kreme donuts. I took 10 dozen too, and we would go all around town selling donuts to raise track uniform money.
Wow.
And we did.
Wow. Old school, for real.
Yeah, because I wanted us to look like a team, and feel like a team.
No question. Coach, you talk about the track workouts, and a lot of us to this day in 2020 still talk about phases. Well, we'll get to later, the phases. Mm-hmm. You ended up at Virginia Tech. Did you ever think when you got to Virginia Tech it would become what it is now? A national recognizable program, a well-respected university. Obviously, it was always a great university academically, mm-hmm. but the growth, the recognition, the lunch pail, the mentality, you are an integral part in that. I mean, and you've seen some of my spotlights when I really specifically feature Hokie players and coaches. How did you see yourself when Beamer got to Virginia Tech and all of a sudden the staff came together, the continuity? Did you really see yourself as an integral part at that time, where you were just happy to have a job and work
No, I've never been happy to have a job. I just, in that respect, but I had been at East Carolina. Here's my path. I left the high school to go to UNC, and I got involved with their program, which they had a good strength and conditioning program. This was 1980-81, okay? And they had players like Lawrence Taylor and some other guys that could play pretty good too.
So you were at UNC when Lawrence Taylor was there?
Yeah, I sure was, yeah.
I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah. There was a lot of other guys too. I mean, it was maybe the most talented group. But at any rate, they already had they had a good strength program in place there. And I was able to get involved with that. And I learned a lot about how to coach a team that way too. And they pushed. They really did push in those days. And so that was, I spent 2 years there, I guess. And I was just getting ready to go back. You have timelines in your head, and especially when you're young, you got to be making a little more money. You got to make some. I'd done the grad assist thing, and East Carolina University came open right there before I was getting ready to take a high school job in Raleigh. And I immediately the next day got in my car and I drove down to Greenville and met with Coach Emery, who was the head football coach there.
Yeah, Coach Emery.
And everything worked with he and I, and I got the job for $12,000 a year. That's what I made.
Wow.
That was 82. And I also taught a class that'll tell you, so that was.
You was teaching?
I taught one class, an activity type class,
I love the legacy spotlights for information just like that. Those little nuggets I never knew. Yeah.
Yeah, I taught a couple at UNC too as a grad assistant, because I went there at a PE assistantship and worked my way into the strength and conditioning program. Got paid for strength and conditioning $5 an hour, and I got to eat on the training table. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good.
So anyway, it was great, really. And at East Carolina, I got around a dynamic coach. Ed Emery was a very dynamic, motivational, balls out, full speed coach. And he had some great players there too. Ernest Biner was there. Terry Long was there. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No, I know both of those guys.
Yeah,
growing up, I was a Redskins fan, and I knew Ernest Biner, and I knew about Terry. They're before my time, but I watched them play. Well,
Terry was considered the strongest football player in history. He did a 865 deadlift, squatted 830 in competition, 837, bench 500. I mean, he was just a freak guy that had made himself into something incredible. But anyway, they were really good football players, and everything went well there. I loved it. A lot of stories could go along with that, but I'll just stop right there and just say that two of the coaches that were at East Carolina, football coaches while I was there, were Phil Almation.
Coach
and
Almation.
Coach Almation and Coach Tom Throckmorton,
Wow.
Yeah. So they came to Tech.
Yeah.
They came to Tech while I was still at East Carolina. So I love the mountains. That's kind of my history. And I was ready for a change, and I heard about it through them. And I was familiar with Virginia Tech. And unfortunately, when the change happened to be able to create a space, they weren't here. Although Coach Almation did come back and coach with us, and I think is very responsible for getting things turned around at Virginia Tech in '93.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A great coach.
No, a great man.
Yep.
When I interviewed and I did the Legacy Spotlight with Cornell Brown and J.C. Price, two great men, and they're becoming great coaches. I love them. They're my big brothers. We talked, and I was not telling them, but reminding them that era when I got to Tech around, I came a year after them. You had Coach Almation, you had yourself, you had Coach Grimes, you had Coach Foster, and you had Grantham, and you for a year you had Tranquil, the offensive coordinator.
Right.
You had probably some of the best, most dynamic, outspoken, intense men ever in the history of Virginia Tech's coaching, and they were very important at that time.
Well, they were. And, to give Coach Beamer full credit there, he was able to manage those guys and be wise enough not to get in everybody's way, and to let them play to their strengths. And having had a previous relation there or a coaching situation with Coach Almation, he knew what I was about, and he knew he could count on me, and I knew I could count on him. And JB Grimes, you did it right with JB Grimes. Your steps as an offensive lineman were correct, right? And everything was going to be done correctly. Yeah. And he was great. Just a lot of, like you say, Coach Foster. I mean, that was a good turning point right there.
So you got to Virginia Tech. What was the first official year you got there?
I got there in 1987. Coach Beamer got there in November, the end of the season in '86. They won the Peach Bowl. They beat NC State, and I got there in February. I came up and pretty much did the same thing, Dwight. I drove up and just hit it off with the AD. He had a big handlebar mustache like I did, and it was just boom, there we go. It's Dutch Bachman, and he was AD here for about 6 months, but he hired Coach Beamer, and thank God he hired me. So,
yeah. What was your I love this because I get to ask you questions I couldn't ask you when I was a player at Tech. Not that it was a bad thing. I'm just so curious right now. What was your impression when you met Beamer? I know for me and the guys that came before me and after me, when he came in my living room, I had a lot of offers from programs at the time that were on a better trajectory successful-wise. But I believed in him. I wanted to play for him as a 17-year-old. And stay in state with guys that he was recruiting. I just believe that he was saying all the right things. I know when I interviewed Roniel Whitaker, he talked about how his grandmother really loved Beamer and Stein Spring and how it was just a family atmosphere. When you met him, he became the head coach. What was your impressions of him?
It's very similar, a good man, good person. And I had heard that from other people too. And, you meet some real people that aren't the best people in this business. They get blown up with themselves, and they don't act right. They don't act like humble people with empathy anymore. But I never saw a big change with Coach Beamer. I mean, Coach Beamer was always the same, and he wanted to treat people right. And he did, and he was a real player's coach. I mean, you'd have to say yourself, I tell you one thing I respected a lot about Coach Beamer is how detailed he was in terms of practice, down to the minute on things, just be strange minutes, that we would have in a practice schedule. It wouldn't always be 5 or 10. And also the fact that I don't ever remember us outside of a scrimmage going over 2 hours in a practice. No. And I have found that that's very unusual. And, you can wear a team out, and he never did that. He was very aware of not wearing the football team out,
Yeah. Yeah. We felt worn out sometimes because
Yeah.
you guys pushed
Yeah, that's right.
us.
That was my job, I guess.
But when you talk about your curriculum, and I'm at my desk here in my home, I do these interviews either in my home or my office. I still have the binder, the workouts. I can't do all that stuff anymore, but some stuff I do. I show my son, and he was like, "You did all that?" And I was like, "Yeah," back when I was in phenomenal shape. And so many guys talk about it. When you built that curriculum, you were in the era, Coach, and I did my research even when I was at Tech. Keith Short and guys like myself talked about this. It was the growth. It was the golden era of strength and conditioning, because all of a sudden programs started to recognize how important it was. One of the programs that really captured it initially was Nebraska. Nebraska was a program that really recognized the importance of having the mental and physical toughness. For you, when we talk about those binders and all those workouts, and you had those quotes and the meal plans and nutrition, was that something you and your coaching staff came up with? Was that pushed by the head man Beamer, and was that just your baby? Where did that
Well,
come
I kind of had a progression as a coach, I thought. And when I first got started, let's say I was at UNC and working with those guys in the weight room as a GA, but I was fairly strong for my size, and I had just put a lot into it, and I studied it. And I felt I could help them be a little bit better as a player if by showing them how to do things a little more correctly, or maybe cut a corner here or there that was going to help them. And then once I got the chance to go to East Carolina and learn some things about coaching teams, I felt that I always felt we could win, Dwight. I mean, I don't care. And you give me a bunch of underdog guys that want to win, I'm home. I'm there. I'm with you. I'll be with you all the way. So having felt that and realizing that you had to make things special if you want people to follow you, and you had to create standards. And once you get to that level, then you got to start policing yourself, those kind of things. And then, which are so important. If you got pride in your program and your players are policing each other, you're going to win. If you got guys that really don't care about the program, you're probably going to struggle. That's just the way I see it.
Absolutely.
And, we built a lot of that, I hope, and we sure tried to in the off season, and we set goals. We had a lot of things that were going on there. And then at the end, as I got older, thank God, and I say that because God became more important to me, but also I recognize so much how the individual can benefit from being in this program as he learns confidence and self-discipline and all the things that go along with being a winner outside of football. And I'm proud of that. And I heard Jarrett on your show, and there's not a better person out there than Jarrett Ferguson to help somebody develop into a better person, male or female. I mean, he's a great coach. And so we had Keith Short, and we had a lot of people in the program that were just fun, really good.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good segue to my question about players. I'm not going to put you on the spot, and because you were there for so long, but when you think about players, Jim Barron, Wayne Ward, Keith Short, Jared Ferguson. You mentioned being, embracing the underdog role, which for decades Virginia Tech had that chip on their shoulder when they entered the Big East and then transitioned to the ACC. We played, and even the guys before and after me, with that chip. When you talk about pushing those guys, are you aware, Coach? I know you were in the moment and you were doing your job and you had so much pride. Are you aware of the impact you had on people like Jared Ferguson and even ladies like Lisa Witherspoon, the Hall of Fame inductee, She was on at my show, and she talked glowingly about you, and even kind of joked how you would call out the male players and when they couldn't do things she did. But she credits you. She credit you for just helping her become a phenomenal. I mean, she's in the Hall of Fame and an ACC Legends,
Yeah.
and she's the size of a milkshake. But she was feisty, tough, and she was one of the best to ever do it. Are you aware of the impact you and Coach Whitten and your staff, especially you, Coach, this is your spotlight, had on those players?
I was aware of it, and I am humbled by it, and I'm aware of the ones that I didn't reach. And that's it's all about timing. Sometimes, they say when the student's ready, the teacher will come. Everybody's got to be ready, and it's hard when you got that many people for everybody to be on the same ready. But again, the more you can get leadership within the team from that, from that guy in that locker next to him, whoever runs your locker room runs your team, And
That's a great point. That is a great point.
And
but,
yeah.
Because you said something. I don't need names, but you said something I caught, and I didn't think about that, and I wouldn't even expect you to say it, but you said it, and it's honestly. You said, I didn't reach everybody.
No.
What is that? Just because they didn't want to buy into what you were pushing, or they weren't able to embrace it mentally?
I think, well, no, you know what? Everybody that puts on that D1 jersey and goes out there and does everything that you have to do, they're plenty tough. They're plenty tough. There ain't nobody that's not tough. And so I don't think that, but I think, sometimes, they're not playing, or sometimes they're not good at what we're doing maybe, so they're not as enthusiastic about doing it because they're great at other things. I mean, it could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
But the goal is to get everybody working for the team too, and then you give more of yourself when you're working for the team. When you're playing for that guy beside you, and you mentioned about Virginia Tech. I came up here expecting to win. Now, when I came up here, Ernest Jones, right?
Yes. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's Hercules right there. I mean, I don't know who else what to say about him. So I came up, and I'm thinking this is going to be a step ahead of East Carolina in some ways, and first player I see was over there near Lester's place. He's walking out with a towel around him, is Ernie Jones. And he's a fullback that looks like a bodybuilder. I mean, he looked like a big time bodybuilder.
Yes,
and I'm thinking, well, this is going to be easy. Little did I know that was the only guy that looked like that, But, the timing of Coach Beamer taking over after, oh my goodness, Coach Dooley, was that we inherited some probation. We inherited some scholarships, maybe that had something to do with Jarrett's situation. I don't know, but we lost some scholarships. We didn't have as many. We were in no conference. No conference.
Yeah.
You cannot survive like that, So for things to gel and turn around, and again, Coach Beamer, you got to look at the leader, but I mean, because he is the leader. For things to turn like they did, and for us to be able to play in that championship game in '99, it's a miracle, really. I consider it one of the miracles, but I always did expect to win. I knew that the weights weighed the same here in Blacksburg as they did in Miami or Tallahassee or anywhere else. So, if we worked our tails off, and I didn't care about the size of the room, I heard you and Jarrett talking about how hot it was in there, in that little weight room we had. And there was a reason it was hot, Dwight. All the windows are open, and I had that big fan sitting out there, but, eye of the tiger, right? But
no question. Yeah. Coach Gentry, you had another phenomenal way of holding everyone accountable. So it could be Cornell Brown, who was an All-American, or it could be Cam Chancellor, or it was Michael Vick. I mean, a funny story I still clown Mike about was I came back. I had just gotten released from the Ravens, and you told me, hey, come on, work with me, man. And it was me, you, Short, and Coach Whitten. You said, while you train, you can, work with me. And I remember I was watching them clear the squat bar. and Mike Emmett Johnson and Terrell Parham, TP,
Mm-hmm.
and Keith Brunel, I think the other fourth person, were arguing about something that they didn't need to be doing, but and they're
Mm-hmm.
arguing about either music or what neighborhood they're from. And they forgot to clear the other side, and the squat bar popped up. And
Mm-hmm.
you came over there and you kicked them all out the weight room.
Yeah.
And Mike, who obviously is an iconic figure, we still laugh about it. I mean, but they ran out, they scattered. They didn't even, but a lot of guys, especially in today's game, would not come up to people and tell them to get out. I remember stories. I mean, when I talk about the player and man I became, I remember after a game, we had Sunday lifts, and I was working out with Matt Lair and Derek Smith. You came over and you put your hand on my shoulder, and I was doing front squat. He said, you should put another plate on there. I think you can do it. And I did it without thinking, and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up, and you did that with everybody. I mean, it didn't matter if you were third string or a starter that was all conference 2 years running. Do you think that was just because you were given the green light, or you were going to do that regardless? Is that just something you feel that was necessary?
Yes, I thought it was. Now, this is just what I think. It's so, what does that mean? But I think, and I thought that you discipline people the same way. You got to hold people to the same standard, If
Mm-hmm.
not, you're into that favorite situation and all that kind of thing. So the discipline side of things is, hey, if you're late, you're going to do this. If you miss, it's something else to do. And we're going to treat everybody the same. We don't wear our numbers in the weight room. So, but then when you motivate people, you can motivate them differently, because some guys are going to go pro, some are not, and some are, just they're thankful to be on the team. And, there's always different ways to motivate people. But as far as the discipline part, I think it needs to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Do you remember the times, and this is something, again, it's funny now, but you had a way of reading the room. Whether it was the preseason, we could be 5-1, or we could, 2-2, getting ready to go on a winning streak. You had a way of reading the room. You had a good pulse on the team. One of the things that you did, and it was always actually very tactful, is if we were in there listening to music, and we're working out, lifting, curling, and doing the different things, our different stations. And if you felt like we were getting complacent, or if you wanted to take it up a notch, you would go and turn the radio off. And then you would turn it off. And then for about a minute, but it felt like 10 minutes, you would wait in your office. And then you would walk out, and the coaches would be beside you like this. And you'd say, men, I don't think we're lifting hard. Whatever the phrase was.
right.
Boston College thinks they're going to,
Yeah.
destroy, whatever that needed to be said. And you would just dig us out, like just go at us, but nothing threatening. And it was just amazing, because you were the strength and conditioning coach, but it was like you were an extension of the JB Grimes, the Stein Springs, the Bustles, the Granthams and the Fosters. It was like you knew, okay, this guy needs to step up and get ready, because it's almost like you knew 2 weeks later he was going to be in the starting lineup before anybody else did. I found that one of your best characteristics that I do even now when I work with my children in my business, being ahead of the game and being able to read the room. I mean, when you turn that radio down, that stereo, and you would walk out, and sometimes it was the call, and you would call the player out in front of everybody. But he never left and kicked over the weights. He looked at you and he responded. Do you remember those moments, Coach?
I do. And I just think that was part of the job, and I think if you don't care enough to read the room, and if you don't care enough to care about the energy in the room and about the goal of why we're all doing these things, then you don't care enough.
Mm.
So, and I think, if coaches don't hold people accountable, whether they're, I found that a lot of times late in my career, some of the position coaches, they didn't want to discipline their players at all, no matter what. And they would want me to discipline a player that had missed their meeting. I couldn't believe that. You want me to run your player that missed your meeting before practice?
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
That is, I shouldn't be saying that out loud right now, but
No,
I just really
this
found
is
that
true.
unreasonable. Not that I didn't care. It was the fact that was your meeting. You should care enough to make sure that doesn't happen, But anyway,
So do you think
you mentioned Coach Bustle. He was also a Pirate, also at East Carolina.
that's
So
right?
how
He
about
was.
that?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But coach, you and again, you're not saying anything that players don't see and know, and it's not like you naming people, but I will ask you this, and I've asked a lot of coaches, high school basketball, college coaches, and I have 3 children, and they're all 3 student athletes, and they're really good. They work hard. They're not even because they're my children,
Yeah.
but I remember a lot of stuff I learned from you and other coaches I played for on all levels. Um, I'm not one of those guys because I'm an old head now, an OG as they call me, that hates on the younger kids, but I do see a difference. You talk about obviously more resources. Weight rooms now look like you go across the country, they look immaculate. They got everything,
Mm-hmm.
freezers and juices and
Mm-hmm.
creams and all these different things. Do you think that, I don't want to use the word soften players, but do you think the new kids now, there's a huge discrepancy as far as entitlement, or are kids going to be kids no matter what generation? It's your job as a coach to make them what they need to be.
I think that's primarily it. What
Mm-hmm.
you said at the end, it's your job to, you may have to present it in different ways. You may not say it exactly the same way, but the bottom line is, and here's something that I think is, if I only left one thing tonight, it would be, and it's going to sound funny coming from me, but it starts with love. It starts with love. And if you don't care, you're doing these things to help that kid, and you're doing these things to help that team. And it's not about you. And the sooner you get that, the better off you're going to be. There were times, this was a little technique. This is really going to sound strange, so be prepared. But there was times that I'd have I learned this technique from reading somebody else doing it, a guy named Ogmandino. But anyway, if you have to have a real confrontation, and I really don't like confrontation, but, then sometimes it will help if you'll say silently and to yourself, and I mean silently and to yourself, I love you, before you start that interaction. It'll change your face and it'll change that interaction. The goal is still probably the same, but if you go into it angry, if you go into it, and I did both, but the more that they understand that you don't hate them, that we're on the same team, that I think young people can still be coached, and I know they can. I just know they can. And then if you can get that team dynamic going again, right now, I never wanted to go to the NFL because I wanted to be able to have hopefully an impact on younger people, And now it seems like the NFL's kind of come to the college ranks really it's almost like free agency, and that's disappointing in some ways to me. I understand it to certain levels. I understand it. But at the same time, I'm all about wanting to get a bunch of guys coming together. I loved watching you guys progress from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer, and how you would hit those times. I mean, nobody missed. And just, man, that gives me chill bumps right now.
No, I'm getting the same thing, because I remember those summers, man.
Yeah.
Right, that last week when I made 16 of my 16 110s,
Right.
and then 2 weeks before I ran 18 110s.
Yes.
And stadium steps, and you would say one more for Syracuse, and we would run another step. All of that stuff. Or we would do bar hang, which we would chalk up and do bar hang. But mentally, I'm sitting here thinking I'm 300 and something pounds hanging from a bar for 1 minute and 20 seconds, and then we would get motivated and say 20 more seconds, and then next thing you know, you're up there for 2 minutes, and it's just crazy because that mental toughness is real, and
It
that
is.
unity you talk about that we had based on your tutelage and your leadership was amazing. It was fun, even though it was at times brutal. I remember metabolic speed packs and the phases and the 400s and me and Sharon still joke how he said, the linemen and linebackers, we ran phases after lifting.
Yeah.
And phases are like a condensed track workout, but it didn't feel condensed.
No.
We don't reminisce about it where it was torture. We reminisce about how it carried over, not just to the field coach, but it carried over to life.
Yeah.
When you have those moments now as a grown man where, you're struggling a little bit, you pick yourself up because you remember those life lessons that you and the coaches taught us. So, I mean, I know that's not a question, but that's just a reminder because I'm on the same page. Do you ever look at it and laugh like, man, that was crazy, like the man makers and all different things?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't admit to that. That might give me some liability issues or
Oh,
something.
okay. Yeah.
No, I'm just teasing. But I just honestly, some of those things I got from different places. The man makers, we went out, played Oklahoma, and played them a pretty good football game.
Mm-hmm.
And the night before, I went out with their strength coach, who was a legendary guy and everything, and he turned me on to starting each off season with the man makers. Oh man, I heard that. So from that point on, that was part of our curriculum.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Nebraska after we lost in the Orange Bowl to them in
96.
96.
Yep.
I had the opportunity to go out and visit with Boyd Epley at Nebraska, and that kind of helped form the idea of the nutrition program along with the sports psych program and trying to get that together. I was always trying to look and see what we could do. I really wanted us, this is egotistical, I guess, but I wanted us to be the Nebraska of the East because they were tough, powerful. I mean, they had it locked down. I mean, they were tight.
Oh, no, they were the standard.
Yeah, they were the standard.
They were the standard.
So, and you know what? We ended up taking 2 from them later on. I know they were down years, but we took them.
Well, no, they were winning 9 games those years. When Bo Pelini was there, we beat them. I mean, yeah. But those are the seeds that were planted years before Tech became a national power, a top 15, top 20 program. That's why I think it's essential that we recognize people like yourself, Coach, because of all the things that you guys did behind, I had Bruce Garnes on, and we talked about all the stuff that guys like yourself and John Berlin and all the coaches did when we were in our dorms and apartments playing video games and scheming and hanging out.
Yeah.
You guys were already thinking about next week, next season, just trying to make sure that we stayed on task. Speaking of that, this is kind of a crazy question because you were at Tech for decades. What are some of your favorite moments? Not just as, seeing us grow as men and graduate and going to professional careers, even outside of football. What are some of your favorite moments, games? Was it beating Miami for the first time?
Yes, it was.
See, we hadn't even talked about it. What are some of your favorite moments?
That was my favorite win, I think, was 95, beating Miami at Tech, and J.C. Price took the game over. And the reason it was such a favorite win, it was like the good guys finally won one. For years at East Carolina, we played Miami about every year, and then coming up here, we were Big East, and it was just like finally, getting that burden off of us, getting that monkey off our back or whatever, and I remember the day, how it was drizzly and rainy and kind of cold, and but man, it was great. It's the only game I remember crying a little bit after the game, on the field a little bit.
The only one
that I think I never cried after a loss. But I tell you, another one that meant a lot to me is when in 2015, that was our last year, those guys that went up to Charlottesville and found a way to win, our guys. They just were not, they might not have been the best team that day, but they were refusing to lose. Not on our watch, I tell you what, I couldn't respect that anymore. And that was a huge win for us. So
did you, and I've asked this to Stein Spring and other coaches, you would be so engaged in the game. You kept us engaged. So I remember like times when you feel like the LOS, the line of scrimmage, the offense and defensive line weren't playing up to par, and you would at halftime after the coaches did their adjustments and talks, you would say, "I need all the linemen in the shower." Are you aware that now a lot of them, and this is not just you, this is across the spectrum of college sports and high school sports, the stuff that you guys did, the way you spoke to us would probably be a lawsuit now.
Yeah,
Or it would be
Bobby.
a Fox 5 documentary because, you could say and do things a little bit different.
Well, that was the sanctity of the locker room,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, when they started bringing cameras into the locker room, that was bad. That was real bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you have to earn the right to motivate a team. Somebody off the street can't come in and motivate you guys. That's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that's put the time in and sweated and, that they know care,
Mm-hmm.
then would have the opportunity maybe to do that. And it should be only within the team. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And, so you're right. It's, that's maybe something that's been lost. It has been. So.
No, I do. I actually, to me, I appreciate the honesty and the way you pushed us. And I think that's why, Coach, I know you pop on Facebook, but I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all these social media things because of my business and because I work with youth and I do things in the community. But when it comes to the guys that were there during your time, all of them, the OGs like myself, the old heads, and even the guys that were there in the 2000s, all of them, they still give you credit. DJ Parker, all those guys, Brendan Hill, Greg Boone, Tyrod, Mike. I can go on and on. They all love and respect you and give you credit. When it comes to like you being on the sideline, you were there for so many games. Not so much now because, you're retired, but when you were coaching us and you were watching those games, I know you wanted us to see us win, but did you ever appreciate, wow, this guy, Maurice DeShazo or Antonio Freeman,
Oh, yes.
Michael Vick, this guy, were you like, man, how did he make that run?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Of course, I like to watch you guys up front, and if you could dominate the game. I loved our old approach, which was we've got a dang good defense. We're going to play good defense, and we're going to run the football, and we're going to keep the clock running. And if you can beat us, come on.
Mm-hmm.
But, you mentioned Michael Vick and other guys, with Mike on the sidelines, I'd be standing next to somebody, and at least 5 times a game, you're going to say, did you see that? Did you see him do that? It was just that incredible.
Yeah.
When I first saw Mike on his recruiting visit, and he turned around and smiled at me or grinned at me, and I thought, man, this guy's special. And his charisma, it is special, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is. It just flat out is. And he worked hard for me. And one time, Dwight, when he was redshirting, I told him, I was trying to motivate him. I know it sounds stupid, but I said, I don't know if you'll play here. I said, I know you can run the option a little bit and things like that, but I'm really not sure. And he kind of he turned it up. He turned it up in our room. He didn't like that. And I guess I was the only person that ever had told him something so stupid. But anyway, it worked. And one time, Dwight, we were in the back in that speed agility gym. And, I want people, when you say up, I want them to come up on a sit up or something like that, together. Mm-hmm. Or we'd have to start over or something. Well, one time I saw this guy kind of coming up slow or something. So I jumped him. It was Mike. And it scared him and it scared me. I'm like, holy cow. We didn't know what to do. We just kind of kept going, because he never shirked anything. He never halfway did anything. And he was always thankful. He always was thankful for what you did. I appreciated that.
No, and he appreciated it. And that's why I'm saying there's so many guys like that appreciated what you said in those moments. I remember one time I thought I had a great workout, and this was my senior year. We were opening up against East Carolina, and I had been getting up early to meet Coach Sano in the stadium, because I was trying to make my way to the season at 5:36 in the morning. And I came in, we worked out after class because it was in the summer. We had our normal workout, and I was by the water fountain. And you just came over just like you did with Mike. You came over to me and you said, I don't know if you're ready for East Carolina, Dwight. And I was like, what? And you were like, I mean, you're working hard, but you're not giving it like you should. I just don't think you're ready. I don't even know if you're ready to start. And I remember I'm a fifth-year senior, and I'm thinking, preseason, all that other nonsense. And I remember, just like Mike and other players, I was like, oh, no. And I worked so hard the rest of that week. I was so self-conscious. I graded out like at 94% or whatever. And we won 38-7 or something. But I remember wanting to show you, like, Coach, man, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
But now, man, I don't know. I mean, I work with kids, and you say something like that now, they may say, "Oh, I'm hitting the transfer portal. He doesn't respect."
That's a whole different subject right there. Isn't it? Let's don't even go down that road.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You can speak. Yeah, you can speak on it.
What I really wanted to say before that, though, Dwight, the thing I never remember you having any kind of negative mood. I never remember you having a bad day. I never remember you trying not to do something. I always remember the positive attitude, which I'm sure, and I wanted to say this tonight, is why you're being successful in your business and everything with your coaching and your mentorship and so forth, is because it does start with love. And they see that, and then they see that you've had success, and they say, okay, well, he knows what he's talking about. He's got some authenticity, Good job, man.
Well, I appreciate that. And
good job.
No, I appreciate that. And I got an award from you. I still have in my basement in the man cave. Every year you give out the strength and condition award to different players in respective sports, whether it's football, basketball, wrestling. And it was made out of Hokie stone. It was like, I still have it. And I got it my senior year after the season ended. And, I remember my wife, at the time, she was my girlfriend. She came, and I was emotional. I was like, you don't understand what this means, because, I always wanted to get super iron Hokie, but I couldn't get the squat. I was an iron Hokie. But those labels and titles meant more than anything, more than all Big East and, getting drafted in the third round, to have you respect us. And then guys like Coach Witten and Sano and Ernie, and it just meant the world to us. Really, really impressive and honored to be a part of that. And, the positivity that's just a Vic thing. That's me and Mike and a lot of us, man. I know for me, that's the way I carry it. And speaking of that, we're almost done. I do have a few more questions, though. When you talk about Virginia Tech and the football program and basketball program, what are your thoughts now as they, in their new era, not so much with the coaches, but do you feel like the programs, football, basketball, I know wrestling's doing phenomenal. You feel like they're headed in the right direction? You feel like things are trending in right?
I think so, as far as I can tell. I mean, I don't know enough about football to judge it, in a lot of ways. I mean, these guys, they make their whole lives coaching the strategy of the game and going out and getting players to fit I was impressed with them the other night, and I mean, they really executed. They had lots of different people in spots, and they looked like they dominated up front.
That's what I saw.
I saw that.
I saw that. My son was like, "You watch the line?" I said, "I always watch the old line."
Hey, you can't hide that, And when you can do that, if you can run the ball up the middle, you can do anything.
Yeah.
And so they could. I mean, so I think that's got more potential than I really thought it might have. So and then the transition in basketball, I like the new coach. I like what he's about. I think he's a blue collar guy, hard working guy, and I'm pulling for him. I hope he does well. He's a local person, and Dave Jackson, is over there.
Yes.
And boy, he won't take any prisoners. You can believe they'll be conditioned and they'll come correct. And he's a great coach. And I like Ben Hilgart, who's in the room with football, and of course Ryan Schumann's in there with him.
Yes,
former brothers, and it's solid. I think
Good,
it's solid.
good, good. What
Yeah.
about Coach? When what are you doing now as far as, your career? I know you retired from tech, but are you keeping up with former players? I know you jump on Facebook from time to time. What are you doing
Hmm.
professionally in that aspect?
Well, I haven't found what I want to do yet. I'm still growing up. So I think right now, I've taught a class online for Baker University, and I'm kind of connected with them somewhat. My wife is a full-time faculty member there, and we're able to teach class and do things from Blacksburg for a
Mm,
graduate program in Kansas. That's
mm,
pretty cool. And
mhm, mhm.
so that's been a learning process, and I've kind of enjoyed that. And then I started something called High School Strength, where we uh, um, put together a program for high school kids and things, and that went so far, but honestly, not as far as it needed to. And part of that was my push wasn't hard enough, probably, or my energy wasn't for it. And I'm just trying some different things. I wrote some articles for training and conditioning that they published, and
Awesome.
there's some good things like that. So I'm staying busy, and I'm looking for opportunities, and I want to serve where the good Lord wants me.
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned your articles. I see your videos from time to time, and I always click on it, and they motivate. It's just so refreshing when you do those videos and you just check in with everybody and gives us words of wisdom, spiritual enlightenment, and just encouragement. I think
Thanks.
people undersell the mental toughness and just empowerment you can get from just some encouraging and positive words. Speaking, you mentioned your family. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Bo. I
Yeah,
mean, you talk about seeing me and the guys grow up, right before your eyes, our 4 or 5 years at Tech or whatever. But you had the distinct privilege of coaching your son. I mean, he
yeah,
ended up being a Hokie. And how was that? I
it was
coached my
great.
son. How was it? How was Bo?
Bo was great. He's still great,
Mm,
and Bo just didn't pick his parents right in that, Bo just wasn't big enough to
yeah.
play the position, but it wasn't because he is a football player. There's no doubt about that.
Hmm.
And thank God he thinks it's his mom's fault that he didn't get taller. So I'm not going to challenge that. And then, but he was the first one to the weight room. He always hustled in practice, I think. And I think he got a lot of good things out of it. And he was a really good high school football player. Well, now
Yeah.
Bo is out on the West Coast working for Netflix and
Awesome.
living in LA, and seems
Wow.
to be doing great. We talk every week and doing good.
He's doing okay with the fires and stuff out there. He's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's an issue. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's awesome, man. And
yeah,
that's great to hear that he's doing all of that, man. And I think that's what people forget, man. Like, we all come there when you're a student athlete, you have your career goals. A lot of it is about becoming a professional athlete. But so many guys like your son have gone on to do great things, which is why I think it's again a highlight to yourself. Coach, you've seen my legacy spotlights, and this has been really great. And again, I'm honored to have you on. I do have one final question or a point I would like for you to make. You mentioned how your journey has brought you spiritual awareness, your faith in God. You take pride in the fact that you believe discipline and accountability is essential to being successful in life. You have gave many men like myself and so many a mindset that has helped us become leaders in our community as fathers. When you look back, because I know you're moving forward, you've always been about moving forward. Next man up, next weekend up, it's time to go. But we're not looking back. That's done with.
hmm
But for a second, for this spotlight highlighting your impeccable career, what would you say to the next young coach coming up, or another player, a future father, a future Mike Gentry, a future whoever that wants to become successful mentally and physically, and they're going to face adversity? Because I still have one of your quotes I use all the time. It was on one of our shirts one summer. It said, "Adversity reveals character."
hmm
I still have it.
yeah.
Um, and I know that's a tough question, but
Well,
just what would
no,
you say?
it is. I think that the only discipline that lasts is self-discipline,
Hmm.
and the biggest battle you're ever going to have is with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can face yourself and see where do I need to improve? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to embrace? And it's not going to be easy, and you're not going to be able to do it consistently. You're not going to be able to do it at all, probably, without the good Lord, because you got to have that Holy Spirit in there that's going to help you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And but if you can do those things and try to make Mike Gentry and Dwight Vick a better person, and then help other people, the two first commandments, according to what I think Jesus said, was they love God and then love other people. And that means help other people.
Mm-hmm.
In the weight room, I try to be 3 times positive for every negative, and I just, and on the track out there, it's different because it was so hard. You just had to push, but, the bottom line is you got to care and you got to believe in what you're doing, be interested in it, and care enough to hold people accountable. I think that's where things go wrong a lot of times.
Yeah. And I lied, actually. I do want to have one final point I want you to make to all the Virginia Tech players that are going to watch this, because I know when I post this, the floodgates are going to open. What are some things you want to tell them? All the guys you coach, all the men, all the players, the coaches you coach with, any final points you want to say?
I just say thank you. I just say thank you, man. Thank you for putting it on the line. Thank you for busting yourself to get that last set of man makers in. Thank you for getting up and walking through the snow.
Mm-hmm.
There was one year that Lester, we didn't have any power and we were maxing out in the old weight room. There was no water and no electricity. And Lester was taking people to their lockers with his flashlight because there's no light in the locker room. Thank you. Thank you guys for caring like that. Thank you for allowing me to coach you like that. And I just pride in the jersey. You got to have that pride in the jersey. And I always wanted to bring people back that had worn the jersey, like Witten and like Jarrett and like yourself and Jackson and, count so many others that wore that jersey. Thank you, older guys, Waverly Jacksons, Joe Swarm. I mean, that's where you get in trouble when you start naming names.
It's okay because they know you love them.
I do. And the thing is, thank you guys that came there as walk-ons and earned a scholarship, and then beat the big boys. I mean, that's if you can do that, if you can do those phases, you can do about it. You're about ready to take Iwo Jima. You can about, you're ready to go. So just apply it now, just apply it now. And that's, nothing could make me happier when I hear things good.
Yeah. Well, Coach, we'll end it on that, man. And you mentioned thank you. I'll thank you again.
Thank you, man.
For everything you've done and you continue to do. The prayers, the support, the positive energy, the leadership, it will never be forgotten, just like your legacy. It continues to live on here in the physical while you're still here with us. We love you. On behalf of a lot of players, on all the players, we respect you. We appreciate you. And again, this has been Coach Mike Gentry's Legacy Spotlight. And like I say, every week when we have an episode, for those that support Vicktory Life, I say thank you. And no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you have a positive impact and you leave a great legacy. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you. Thank you.